Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2 was a bit of a mess. Given how much of Part 2 is just stock footage, one can imagine that Part 3 is only going to be about 3 minutes of new footage. Ricky was shot and presumed dead at the end of Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2. Do we get a long-lost brother to continue the story? Nope. We quickly learn that Ricky survived the ordeal and is now a coma patient that is sporting Jinzo's amplifier from Yu-Gi-Oh! Ricky is no longer played by Eric Freeman in this installment. Instead, cult icon Bill Moseley takes the role. Given how iconic Eric's performance was in Part 2, you can imagine that Bill has some big shoes to fill. So, of course, Ricky is now a silent antagonist a la Jason or Michael Myers. Silent Night, Deadly Night 3, Better Watch Out, was directed by Monte Hellman and produced by Arthur Gorson. The movie opens with Laura being awoken by thoughts of someone calling her name. Laura approaches Ricky, who is lying on a hospital bed. He begins to pursue her with a scalpel. She becomes trapped, and she sees Ricky in the walls covered in blood. She flees the room and runs into Santa Claus, who has her sit on his lap to tell him what she wants. Then he tries to kill her, waking her up. We soon find out that Laura is blind, but also clairvoyant. The doctors are trying to determine if she has a psychic connection with the comatose Ricky. If you thought we weren't going to get stock footage in this movie, well, you were wrong. Very wrong. Laura experiences visions of the attack on Billy and Ricky's parents. Again, I don't think Ricky would be able to remember that, but whatever. I guess that's a staple for these films at this point. The scenes with Laura in the doctor's office tend to drag with shots of Laura setting up her cane and shots of Ricky lying on the bed. In fact, a lot of the movie tends to drag with lingering shots. Anyway, the plot of the film, Laura is set to go to her grandmother's cabin in the woods for Christmas with her brother and his girlfriend. But a drunken Santa enters Ricky's room and begins yelling at the comatose man, waking him up. Ricky kills the Santa and escapes the hospital. Ricky obviously goes after Mother Superior, right? No. He goes after Laura due to the telepathic link that they now share. Ricky shows up to the cabin before Laura and her brother / his girlfriend. Laura's grandma cooks for Ricky and cares for him, but she's ultimately killed for her trouble. Laura shows up and psychically realizes that her grandmother is dead. The cops are then brought in, and the lead detective / main doctor both drive to the cabin in the woods. Robert Culp plays the detective in this movie, and here's my obligatory mention of my big name actors in CDI Games video where Robert Culp was featured. As always, link is in the description. Culp is actually the best part of the film in my opinion. There's random banter between him and the other actors, and they're honestly great. Anyway, back to the story. Ricky then goes on the hunt and tries to kill Laura, her brother, and her brother's girlfriend. I mentioned earlier that Ricky basically becomes a silent slasher villain because he doesn't talk, but the way he stalks his victims is very reminiscent of Jason / Michael from earlier Friday the 13th or Halloween films. He crashes through doors, barely feels pain, and just keeps stalking his victims. The ghost of Laura's grandmother reminds Laura to use her psychic powers. Of course, she doesn't really use her powers, and instead she lets Ricky fall on a spike, killing him again. Silent Night, Deadly Night 3, Better Watch Out is It makes use of stock footage again, and heavily extends scenes to pad out the runtime. Given that Eric Freeman didn't reprise his role as Ricky is honestly just boring this go-around. Speaking of Eric, he apparently just disappeared for a while in the early 90s. And he wasn't involved in the original DVD release's audio commentary because he disappeared. Although he did resurface later on and provide a commentary for the Scream Factory Blu-ray release. Silent Night, Deadly Night 3, Better Watch Out, is just okay in my book. The plot is nonsensical, and I think that otherwise saves a boring, borderline unwatchable movie, but that's about it. Well, that and Robert Culp. He definitely makes it enjoyable. The follow-up films don't really have anything to do with Ricky or Billy, so you'd be better off just stopping at Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2. Anyway, that's enough of the Silent Night, Deadly Night series for this Hyp3r Halloween. Time to return to another movie series starting tomorrow.